Welcome to the Empowerment Zone with Ramona Houston, where we zone in on Black and Brown relations and our journey to empowering our communities.
Hello, welcome to the Empowerment Zone, and our guest today is Mr. Marlon Addison. Marlon is going to tell us all about emotional intelligence, and I must say I've been reading that book for the last 6 months. I haven't quite finished it yet, but I love the book Emotional Intelligence, and I'm kind of surprised that it's taken me that long to read it because I've been going in and out of all these other books. But it's one of the classics and that everybody should read. But just to give you a little bit about Marlon, he is a family first man. I love that. Anybody that knows my family knows my daddy was a family first man. And so he loves his family. Marlon loves his family, and they are indeed the heartbeat of his life. He is a sales and marketing leader who thrives on the interdependency between sales and data analytics. And for over 20 years, he has experience in the healthcare arena, but he's drawn to sales, marketing, and education, all while building and steadying relationships. Call him the sales whisperer. Proud husband, father of 3, and he is also a lifelong New Jersey resident. Marlon is really involved in teaching about emotional intelligence. He has trained sales teams for over 10 years. And he's also taught at various colleges, teaching students about emotional intelligence. So welcome, Marlon.
Hey, Dr. Ramona. Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here. Thank you.
Man, I'm so glad to have you today. I wish I would have finished that book before we had this conversation, but I'm really digging it. And I'm an avid reader, so I'm kind of surprised that this is a classic that I hadn't read a long time ago. But tell us all about, first, before we delve into emotional intelligence, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you like to do, your hobbies, your interests. Just tell us who you are.
Absolutely. Well, you read about a little bit about what I do. So I like to differentiate for folks who I am.
Heard that.
Right. I am a husband. Happy husband. I am a doting dad. I super enjoy that. I am a mentor. We'll talk a little bit about that more as we delve into emotional intelligence, what it means, and how it impacts different people. And I'm a friend, brother, uncle. I'm a human support system. So I love doing that and spending time definitely with family, extended family, and just mentoring and touching those where I can, however that manifests itself, because EQ is something that emotional quotient is something that, it manifests in different ways in different people. So That's why we have different personality tests, right? One of the old is Myers-Briggs. We have Clifton Strengths. We have the DISC assessment. So, we have different things, but ultimately it tells you, where you are, what your barometer is. So that's who Marlon is.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm glad to hear you talk about Marlon from the perspective of being a person and a supporter of family and friends. A lot of times when we talk about ourselves, we talk about what we do professionally and not necessarily who we are as individuals and as beings and as spirits walking this earth. So I'm happy that you put that in perspective. So tell us about emotional intelligence, which is also called EQ. And, what is it? What's the definition? How did you get into it? Why are you so passionate about emotional intelligence? All of that.
Right. So, and I'm glad you phrased it that way, because oftentimes when you hear EQ, EI, emotional intelligence, emotional quotient, it's a buzzword now. And like I said, I've been doing this for 10 plus years. And when I started it, my journey, not starting EQ, It wasn't as popular, right? There was some resistance to it. People like, well, what are you talking about? What does that mean? That wasn't really how corporate America was defined. It just wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
So as we've grown, and I'm glad we have, and we still have work to do, the first place I start, I tell people what the difference is, right? So you hear EQ, which is emotional quotient.
Mm-hmm.
That's very similar to IQ, right? Your intelligence quotient.
Mm-hmm.
That is the number or the factor, right, that determines where you are on a scale.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes people say EQ, EI, there's the difference, right? EQ is the actual number, right, where you fall on that emotional intelligence scale. So I'll start there just to give them some context. And emotional intelligence, it's really common sense, but the definition is it's a set of learnable skills. I repeat that. It's a set of learnable skills that characterize how you interact with other people.
I like that.
That's what ER. It's a set of learnable skills that characterize how you interact with other people, your relationships, building skills, and again, how you progress. Now that's the definition. So there are 4 staples, 4 pillars to emotional intelligence, right? So the first is self-awareness. Right, self-awareness, and that's knowing your emotions, your strengths, your challenges, etc. Self-management. Right, that's the second piece, self-management, controlling or redirecting. Maybe you have a disruptive emotion that you need to be aware of, right? That's self-management. The third is relationship management. And that's managing, obviously, relationships and trying to get folks to go in the desired direction or see where they are and help them, just realize where they are emotionally as well. And lastly, social awareness. And social awareness, in a word, is empathy. Just considering other people's feelings, right? When you make a decision. And that's, to me, the most important, right? It can be a small decision. What decision do I make with my family, right? How does that impact them, right? I'm a big family guy. So if I did something to harm my wife or kids, that's not just immediate, that's generational. That's how I think. Like, how does this impact my son's psyche, my daughter's psyche? So that's emotional intelligence. So again, I'll repeat, it's self-awareness, self-management, relationship management, and social awareness. Those are the 4 cornerstones in addition to the definition of emotional intelligence, which is, again, a set of learnable skills, highlighting the characteristics of working with other people and building relationships. So, that's a mouthful, but I want people to hear that, and I want them, when they listen to this or go back and listen to it, that they can hear it and repeat it. It's good to, have it on repeat so you can learn what it is, and we can talk more about that. So I'll pause there.
I'm glad you distinguished for our audience between EQ and EI, because we're often throwing around these acronyms, and sometimes they end up merging, and people don't know that there's actually a difference between the 2 of them, as well as giving us a great definition of emotional intelligence, and that is actually a learnable skill. A lot of times people think that there are certain skills that you have, and then there's certain skills that you just don't have, and you can never get them. And you're saying emotional intelligence is something that you can develop, and that's good. That's good to know. So that people can feel like that's not something, our audience can feel like it's not something out of our reach. The 4 pillars, self-awareness, self-management, relationship management, and social awareness is key to building emotional intelligence. I wish I could remember the name of this show. I don't watch TV much, but my mom, when I go over to her house, she likes me to watch this show with her. And it's funny. It's about this really smart guy as an adult. And then they go back, and it's a different show of when he was very little, when he was young. He's like a genius and has a high IQ. And so I wish I could remember the name of this show, but anyway, it's funny.
Is it from the spinoff from The Big Bang Theory?
Yes, that show. Yes. And it's so funny. I wish I knew the name of the show, but anyway,
it'll come to me. I'm blacking out. My wife loved those shows. Yeah.
He has a twin, And on one of the episodes one time, he's like super smart, like genius. He's like in college and he's like very, very young. Well, his sister, they were showing in the show that she had a high EQ, high emotional intelligence.
Right.
And so it was, yeah. And it was so funny how they, without really being blunt about it, they were actually having that conversation in the show of what the different, like.
Right. Sheldon.
Yeah. Sheldon. That's it. How they are actually both talented, but in different ways, or they have different types of intelligence. So it was just funny how they played that out on the show.
So I'm glad you mentioned that. That's like a perfect segue, because what happens is people associate smartness, right? And everybody's smart in their own way. People have their gifting. And I would add that whatever you get complimented on the most, people should take note. That's usually your area of gifting. You should follow those breadcrumbs, right? Like if you're getting complimented in a certain area, several times a day, a year, whatever, people are like, man, Ramona, you are very good at interviewing. That's one of your superpowers. But with the example you gave with Sheldon and the Big Bang Theory, it's perfect. People usually associate, again, smartness with, okay, he's a physicist, right? He's a rocket scientist. And that's awesome. You are super smart. But what people don't realize is how you relate to people. People resonate with how you say it, right? Right? We can say, hey man, the sky is blue. No, yeah, the sky is blue, right? It's how you say it. The fact still remains, but it's how you relate. So I'm glad they juxtapose the two to show people like you need that. And in fact, most Fortune 500 leaders have a high EQ, and that's not by accident, right?
Wow.
They know how to relate to people. They know how to talk to people, and they know how to get it done. And even when they're quote unquote put on the spot, they know how to respond, and they stop and pause and they think about it. And I'm so glad you said that, because there's some people who are very smart but don't have a high EQ and may tell you something that's true, but you're like, ouch. It's a better way to say it, even though it may be a fact. And it's something that I talk about a lot that I coined called age and stage. Right? You may be at age and stage.
Okay.
So you may be at a particular age, right? Doesn't mean you're at the appropriate stage cognitively to handle something, right? Because we're reading about a lot of kids now, 13, 14, 15, getting their master degrees, working on PhDs. And that's awesome that they have the brain power. But if you're 12 and 13, one, your brain is not fully developed yet, right? Two, and if I'm a parent, I'm concerned, like, who is my child in a class with, right?
Exactly.
There are other adults, right? And that goes to it. And they may not be empathic. They may not, have the empathy or sympathy. And maybe a few of them may be even jealous. Who knows? But my point is, with age and stage, you have to make decisions. Just because your kid, I even go even simpler. Even if your child is able to skip a grade, let's say go from 5th grade to 6th grade, doesn't mean he or she should. I'm not saying they shouldn't. I'm just saying just because they can doesn't mean they should, because you have to think about the environment, think about the other teachers, think about the other students. How is that going to impact that child who's not fully cognitively formed? Right? So age and stage plays a great part. Or it can be something, again, as simple as stage, right? You may think somebody with your driver's license, right? Like maybe I got mine at 38. It's like, wow, that's a late stage to get it, right? How old were you? But everybody's different. So it works both ways. That's my point with EQ, right? Emotional intelligence, rather. You think about those things and about how it impacts people.
Yeah, that argument on age and stage really makes sense. Just thinking back to my childhood, we had somebody who skipped a grade because he was considered very intelligent, and he wasn't good after that. You know what I mean? It helped. It really impacted his socialization and all of that, his friendships. And you could tell, even though he may have been able to do the work, you could tell that he wasn't right, as a person. So I agree with you that just because you can do the work doesn't mean that that's in your best interest.
Right. Particularly at the time. Who knows?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So, what does you talked about, I want to go to the point about CEOs being, they are people with high
EQs, yep.
EQ. Tell me about, do you think these people actually develop those skills, to your point, or how I'm curious about your take on the CEOs and EQ.
So great question, first of all. I would say it's twofold. Yes, some of them actually study it. Particularly, you'd be surprised, a lot of them studied it at a later stage, right? Because some of them may not have been aware of EQ. So they studied it later, but that goes back to my original definition. It's a set of learnable skills. So it doesn't matter the age, you can learn it. And the second piece of that is some of them are just naturally gifted at it. It's a gift. Now, if you practice your gift, it becomes a skill.
Exactly.
Right? So that's what we want. But many of them got there because just natural interactions, like thinking, social awareness, right, which is my favorite, having empathy, like how is my decision going to impact my team, whether it's a small decision or a huge decision. So they definitely think about that. And you can see it, how they relate to people, right? Even world leaders. Oh, that's too simple. Yeah, it's simple because that's how they're relaying it and you can receive it. Of course, they have a detailed plan in the back, but as a leader, you understand that you can't go through A, B, C, D, corollary 1, 2, 3, 4. You have to get it out to the people so that they understand. Doesn't matter who's in the room, right? It could be blue collar, white collar. All of them should get the same message. And I think if the CEO or whomever, COO, is gifted in that area, they can get that point across.
Mm-hmm. So tell our audience how, if they're interested in developing emotional intelligence, what are some of the steps that they would take in developing that skill?
Awesome. So first, you just need to know where you are and who you are. And I'll repeat that because I think people take that for granted. Know where you are and who you are. And I mean emotionally and intelligently and spiritually. Like, where are you? Are you in a place to delve into this and learn more about it, right? Because desire, I don't care how you slice it, desire always comes before discipline.
Yep.
You can be disciplined, and that's very important. And people mention discipline, and that's great. You got to have it. However, if you do not have that desire first, the discipline will not come, right? You'll have willpower, which maybe, depending on the person, maybe get you involved for a week, maybe a month, but willpower fades. It's not meant to last, right? It's not. Desire stays in there and you do something even when you don't want to, all right? I'm getting up at 5 a.m. I really don't want to. My brain is fighting me, telling me nope. But if you don't respond, and scientifically proven within the first 5 or 7 seconds and getting up, you're hitting that snooze button. So you have to constantly fight against yourself, and that's what that means, to get up and want to do it. So I would say start there. Where's your desire? And then, it's quite simple. You can start. There's several books on emotional intelligence, right? I'm reading one now, which I love, by Dr. Rick Brinkman. And I know this is audio, but I'm going to show it. And it's dealing with meetings you can't stand. Right, Dr. Rick Brinkman, and he also has one dealing with people you can't stand. So it's big on emotional intelligence, and I'll give a quick example from his book, Dealing with People You Can't Stand, and he has different titles for it as far as labels, I should say. So one label is a tank. So let's say you're in a meeting and someone, is kind of aggressive and asking questions. Well, Dr. Ramona, you said it's going to be done here. Where is it? What's that? And if you're not emotionally intelligent, you may read it the wrong way. Tanks specifically, even though they're a bit forceful and aggressive, if you answer his or her question, they tend to settle down. Well, it's on January 7th. Yes, we talked about that last week. Yep, I put it in the meeting minutes, and then I'll have part 2 for you the following week. And then, okay, got it, because I knew you said last week. they settle down, right? That's one of the definitions, an example he gives of a tank. But a tank can become a grenade, which blows up the entire meeting if their questions aren't answered. So you need to know the levels and phases of that. And I mentioned that to your earlier question to say, know where you are before you delve into emotional intelligence. I think everybody should to a degree, to a large degree, but know where you are. So hopefully that gives some insight and answers the question.
So, Professor, tell us, expand on, if you, let's pretend like we're your audience for a workshop. Tell us some of the things that you would explore about emotional intelligence, so that I want this to be a teaching moment, for those of us who are unfamiliar with emotional intelligence. We can get into it a little so that we can give a broad overview.
Got it. So typically when I'm giving workshops, I'm very interactive. And shout out to William Patterson University. I'm on the advisory board there, and I also received my my Master of Sales degree there, Sales and Marketing. And we have at William Patterson University a Super Bowl of Sales. So I participate in that as well. And typically what I do when I'm speaking to the business class is I bring them up, right? I give them real life examples, and either we act them out, right? Or I pepper them with questions. What would you do in this instance, right? Even something simple, right? What if somebody stepped on your foot? What would you do, right? And I know where I'm from originally in the city, that was a huge deal. It's silly looking back on it, but it was what it was. That wasn't, my EQ was super low, right? That's what it was. So that's how I responded, right? I couldn't pour out what wasn't in me.
Yes.
So that's what I try to get them to understand, right? When we're learning about emotional intelligence, is to fill that bucket, fill that cup, so that when those buttons are pushed, and they will be pushed,
yes, that
what comes out of you, you have built up inside of you. So again, you can't get orange juice from an apple, right? So it's whatever's in you. So my approach is very interactive, very question oriented, and we go from there, and I kind of go with the flow, but I keep them oriented in the fact that I go back to the definition of emotional intelligence, right? Learnable skill set characterized by how you interact with others, your relationship, the 4 pillars, right? Self-awareness being my social awareness being my favorite. Self-awareness, self-management, relationship management, and social awareness. So I keep it there. We talk a great deal, but I come back to that. I don't want them to be scattered. We talk a lot, but my basis is always about the definition and the 4 pillars. I'll always come back to that. And in fact, I'll give you the actual formula for EQ. This is a specific formula. So for those who are listening, they can jot this down. It's perceiving emotion, understanding emotions, managing emotions, and using emotion. So I'll repeat it. It's perceiving emotions, understanding emotions, managing emotions, and using emotions. So it's pretty much the 4 pillars, but that's the actual formula for emotional intelligence. And some of this sounds easy, but in practice, and I try to be simple so people can immediately apply it. But it's difficult because you're dealing with emotions, right? People, take the emotions out of it. You can never take the emotions out of anything. I get what people are saying, like settle down and think about it. It's a better way to put it, or let's think about it a bit more and go to a relaxed place. But you can never, no matter what it is, it can be something simple, remove emotions. That's how we were constructed. That's how we're built. Emotions are there, and they're there for a reason.
Okay, I got a whole bunch of questions. I know we have limited time, but I want to ask, when you say you can't take your emotions out of things, because we're emotional beings, right?
Right. Yeah.
So I don't know how to phrase this question. How would you what do you say about men versus women in emotional intelligence? Because women, we tend to be more emotional, or at least I think we are.
I didn't say don't get me in trouble. I didn't say
said it. He didn't. I said it. And so we lead a little bit differently, right?
Yep.
And sometimes it's criticized that we embrace our emotions, and men who embrace their emotions are also criticized.
Right.
That they're weak or something like that.
No.
And so
That's a good question.
I'm wondering, how do you? What have there been studies? I mean, what is the take on emotional intelligence in men and women?
So here's Marlon's viewpoint. Right. And Marlon's viewpoint. When I say you can't remove the emotions, you can temper your emotions, right? You don't have to allow them to boil over. And yes, men and women are different people, obviously. And I'll give an example. My wife and I would say I'm more emotional than she is. She's more stoic at times, right? And I'm more emotional in that, I like to express it. I like to talk. Oftentimes I can be sarcastic. So she's like, okay, I'm not doing that. I'm not going down that road. So it depends on where you are. But I would say, even though it's worldwide viewed as like men, you got to hold it in. You explode that way. It doesn't work out well. I would challenge people and charge them with investigating that further to see what happened to those people in power who held it in. My examples would be more around whether I agree with their politics or not, or their life as a whole, but I look at how they work with other people, right? Yep. Like one example, a tactic I use is when I'm meeting with somebody, particularly at work. It could be a performance plan. I don't go to the same meeting room because automatically they're like, okay, I got a last review. I'm going in here. That means something. We may go grab a bite to eat. Right? We may go in the caf downstairs, or we may go outside, not in a pandemic anymore, but those are one of the tactics that I use. Like that's emotion, because I know where this person is and I work with he or she, and I've done their review before. I should say we've done their review because it should be, a two-way street. So those are the things I look at. I think the criticism of women being emotional, I think it's a cop-out for the most part. Women leaders are superb, in my opinion. You have several you can choose from, whether they're highlighted or not, especially, single mothers, for example, just leaders and what they have to do. And they're raising these sons, right? And so I think that's just like, it's just oxymoronic, right? Oh, no, you're a woman, you're emotional, but you raised a strong man. Like, come on. So.
Yeah, I was just curious about that, and just in your explanation, talking about you being the more emotional one and your wife being more stoic. I come from a family of men who are not afraid to express their emotions, and it's really healthy. And I know one family reunion we were at, and the last event of the family reunion. We looked around and all the men were crying. And, and so after that, it became a joke, because whenever the family is all together, all the men are crying and the women are like trying to hold it down. So
however they can get it out.
Yeah. But to your point, we can all embrace our emotions, and there are challenges when we don't embrace our emotions. I was just wondering what how the professionals look at emotional intelligence between or comparing the two sexes. That's kind of what I was getting at. Well, I really enjoyed this conversation.
Ditto.
I so want to go delve into it. I'm going to have you back. And we can talk a little bit more about emotional intelligence, especially after I finish reading this book. And I know I'll have a million questions after that. So I'm going to put that in the book. This is the first time in my life over the last 3 years I read multiple books at a time. I never did that before. I always, went one book to the
right,
and then finished it and then went to the next. So that's why it's been 6 months, because I've been doing a bunch of other books in between.
How is that for you? I started doing that recently as well. I'm on the same mindset. I would just finish one book and go to the next. And I'm also doing audiobooks. So
I haven't delved into audiobooks yet, but for me, I think I prefer reading one all the way through than going multiple, because the arguments, the authors usually lay out their arguments at the beginning, and I usually have to do a lot of review because I want to digest everything they say, right?
Yeah. So I pause and I check it out. I do the same thing.
Yeah, I have to go and reread and stuff, and I think it's more efficient if I just read the book. But I've got at least seven that I'm reading right now, and I prefer the one, finish it and go to the next one. But these books just came to mind, and they were key at the moment. Like I wanted to read them at the moment, so that's why I ended up opening it up, because what's going on nowadays, I wanted to, whatever I'm doing personally or professionally, that book was speaking to it. So that's why I wanted to go and read that one,
Exactly.
Yeah. So, well, I'm happy to have you. I can't wait to have you back again. If you'd like to be a guest again, to come back and talk a bit more about emotional intelligence, as well as talk about fatherhood. I can't wait to have that conversation.
Yes, with you. For sure. Yes.
With that being high on your priority list. Well, thank you, Prof. Marlin.
I've been designated.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate having you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And I'll let folks know, if you don't mind, where they can find me.
Yes, please.
They can find me on LinkedIn, obviously, Marlon Addison. Just look me up. And also via Twitter at Marlin Mentors. That's MarlonMentors, Marlin Mentors.
Thank you. We appreciate having you, and we look forward to having you back.
Yep. Thank you so much, Dr. Ramona. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right.
Hi, today I have Mr. Marlon Addison with me today, and he's going to give us a strategy for college success. Hi, Marlon.
Hey.
So tell us, what schools did you attend? What were your majors? And what is that one piece of advice you would give students who want to excel in college?
So undergrad, I went to a small Lutheran school called Uppsala College, which is no longer in existence. So all the information is through Felician. So you'll see that on my bio and resume now is through Felician. But I actually attended Uppsala College. I was a pre-law and American Lit major. So I was a double major. And then from there, I got my master's in sales leadership and marketing from William Paterson University. So what I would recommend for those, I'll give a little context. When I undergrad, I went EOF, which is Equal Opportunity Fund or Educational Opportunity Fund. So for me, that was a blessing because I was first generation and I learned a lot that way. So for me personally, I would recommend that with all the data out there, you understand what college or university you would like to attend. There's the racial makeup there. There's the graduate information. There is so much there that I just wasn't aware of when I attended and didn't know as far as finances, how to pay your bills, how it was structured. Again, EOF was huge for me. So I would say plan, whether it be with your guidance counselor, your parents, whomever, to help you situate how you want to go to school, right? I think that's a missed nuance, how. And that means financially, that means location, again, racial makeup, because you want to see who's there and the number of persons there. So that's important. If you play a sport, it's just all is interrelated. So I would recommend the how, whatever that means for you, but that's what it means for Marlon, like the financial piece, of course, the educational piece, the location, the people, the distance from home, know yourself.
Great advice. Know the how of your college experience prior to going to college. What is it that you need to know? What is important to you as a student so you can pick out the college that is best for you? Thank you so much, Marlon. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
A special thank you to the incredible team of the Empowerment Zone. Terry Gully, theme song. NADWorks, digital support, and of course, our featured guest.
If you enjoyed my podcast, please subscribe. We are on all of your favorite podcast platforms. Be sure to rate us on Apple Podcasts too. Thank you for your continued support.